The Bogosity Podcast, early and ad-free. Become a subscriber at Patreon, Subscribestar, or Discord. Use the links at donate.bogosity.tv.
Welcome to the Bogosity Podcast for the week of August 10, 2025, the podcast that did the do. This is your host, Shane Killian. Let's herniate the news of the bogus. So we've covered how class action suits can be problematic in many ways. Even more so is the reverse class action suit, where a whole mess of people are just pulled in as defendants by category. In this case, Voltage Pictures filed suit in Canada to basically everyone who ever used a particular IP address. They sued a customer of ISP Rogers, Robert Salna, who used his IP address to give out Wi-Fi access to his tenants. And of course, a lot of them used that connection to share movies over BitTorrent. Voltage filed, the proposed representative respondent, as well as each member of the proposed respondent class, are persons whose names and identities are currently unknown to the Voltage parties, but who have unlawfully, and without the Voltage parties' authorization or consent, infringed copyright in the works, including by illegally uploading and distributing the works for free, in full or in part, over the internet. And they claim that this covers some 2,000 individuals. The problem, as we've covered in the past, is that you can't find someone guilty or liable based on IP address because that address can be used by more than one person. So now they're using this idea of a reverse class action to basically sue all 2,000 people at once. Law professor Michael Geist explained, class actions typically involve a representative plaintiff who represents many others who have suffered the same harms from the actions of the defendant. Reverse class actions feature a single plaintiff, Voltage, and multiple defendants, the alleged file sharers. One of the biggest concerns involves questions of representation for the defendant class. Before certification, the court will want assurance that the interests of the defendants will be fairly represented. But who will represent those interests? Who will pay for the legal counsel? Unlike a plaintiff-led class action, where lawyers are often willing to invest in the case, there is no payoff at the end of this case, and finding someone to represent the class will be a challenge when the only named representative is John Doe number 1. The federal court saw these problems and dismissed the suit in 2019. Last year, the Federal Court of Appeal in Toronto heard what should be the final arguments in the matter, and they likewise saw the problems of funding a defense. Quote, the federal court also noted that the appellant's litigation plan failed to make adequate provision for funding class counsel. The federal court had held that Mr. Salna would have had little incentive for defending the class proceeding, given the modest amount of a potential security damages award against him. They focused on one question. How do defendants know whether or not they're part of the class? How do you serve them if you don't know who they are? Voltage's answer was the normal notice regime that alerts people they've illegally downloaded something. You know, the one that's a total joke. So now the appeal court has issued a judgment rejecting the reverse class action suit, finally leading to the dismissal of the case. The problem is, the Copyright Act specifically states that these notices can't be used to offer settlements, demand payments, or to request personal information, all of which means it also can't be used as a litigation tool. The court also found, quote, I cannot see how there is any basis in fact to conclude that the proposed class proceeding is preferable to individual actions because the individual issues in this case swamp whatever common issues there might be. If that sounds familiar, it's probably because you're a viewer of my YouTube channel and we just covered similar issues with the class certification in Bart's v. Anthropic. The court issued the dismissal without leave to reapply, which is basically the same thing as without prejudice in America, meaning they can't refile, and this is done. That doesn't mean the infringers can't be sued, but you have to find out who they are and sue them properly. Yes, one at a time. You're making the accusation. You need to put in the work to find out exactly who you're talking about. So, a good turn of events in Canada. And thankfully, there's no such judicial atrocity as reverse class action here in the States. Let's hope it stays that way.
Sometimes you just have to stomp some skulls. From the mind of Mr. Dapperton, a game for the ages. In a world where a race of undead furries tries to take over the world's nuclear arsenal, one man must stop them. But which man? You choose. The Orange Overlord.
Oh, my ear!
Bernie Slanders. Debate Dominator.
My kippa's ruined!
Or Joe Sleepy.
Build me back.
And of course, Mr. Fancy Pants himself.
Forget those losers! You can get the Gold Edition and play as 4 more characters, including me, the Spooky Spaceman, along with Billionaire Brat, Professor Proof, and the easiest way to play, as Jesus himself!
7 complete different worlds, with more coming all the time. Full controller support. You can even get eaten by a worm and pooped out into a furry cathedral.
And don't forget that Gold Edition, where you can play the ultimate challenge, Devil's Doorstep.
This gory satirical adventure pulls no punches. You know you want this game. Go to links.bogosity.tv/skullstompers and play Skull Stompers now.
Well, it looks like more trouble for Senator Adam Schiff, the one who lied about the evidence in Russiagate so hard he was censured. Now, in what's becoming variations on a theme, it looks like he's also being investigated for mortgage fraud. The U.S. Attorney's Office in Maryland revealed that it's pursuing Schiff based on accusations that he repeatedly lied about his primary residence on federally backed mortgage applications over the span of a decade. It's almost exactly the same scandal that Letitia James is facing. Although representing California, Schiff listed a Maryland property as his primary residence to secure more favorable loan terms. This goes against what Schiff said directly in his Senate campaign in 2023.
I think just about every member of Congress has a residence in their state and a residence back in D.C., since we're in session much of the week. And people make a family decision where they're going to have their kids. But our principal residence, our primary residence is California. It always has been and always will be.
And he needs to have his primary residence in California in order to represent California. Otherwise, he'd have to run for Senate in Maryland. This isn't just a paperwork error. The Federal Housing Finance Agency found evidence that Schiff falsified bank documentation and property records repeatedly over many years to line his own pockets. And that would include violations of wire fraud, bank fraud, and submitting false financial statements. Ironically, exactly what he was accusing Donald Trump of, and for which Donald Trump got sued in that absolutely insane case in New York that we covered. On top of it all, they uncovered an affidavit from 2011 where Schiff declared, under penalty of perjury, that his primary residence was in Montgomery County, Maryland. Schiff spent all those years lecturing us about truth and accountability and no one is above the law. I swear, when you hear someone going on and on about stuff like that, they're the ones you have to look out for. So now, Senator John Cornyn has introduced the Law Enforcement Tools to Interdict Troubling Investment in Abodes Act. Yeah, that spells the Letitia Act. The act would impose minimum sentences on public officials convicted of bank fraud of up to 5 years in the case of repeated patterns of abuse. That may not be applicable to Schiff or James due to the Constitution's prohibition of ex post facto laws, but somehow I doubt they're the only ones doing it. Trump lambasted Schiff on Truth Social, even misspelling his name, saying, quote, "I have always suspected Shifty Adam Schiff was a scam artist, And now I learned that on and on and on, we don't really care what Trump says. But here's what Shifty said in response, quote, "This baseless attempt at political retribution won't stop me from holding him accountable. Not by a long shot. This is just Donald Trump's latest attempt at political retaliation against his perceived enemies." Oh, right. This is the political retribution. Not what you and the other Democrats together with establishment Republicans did to him for years. I'm just going to reiterate my basic overall position. Just build prison walls around D.C. Keep them all away from us and our lives. Shifty, you and the other career criminals can stay in there and LARP all you want. We won't even make you wear orange jumpsuits.
If you're on the Wi-Fi in a coffee shop or hotel, anyone on that network can get your traffic. Do you really trust all of those strangers? For that matter, do you really trust your ISP? A VPN can protect you from prying eyes, disguise your location, and even foil government censors. It's essential in this day and age, so go to vpn.bogosity.tv and you'll be taken to BoxPN. Starting at just $2.99 a month, you can get unlimited high-speed connections to VPN servers all over the world, and they don't log connections, so your privacy is assured. Traveling abroad, just VPN home, and don't worry about what those other governments are doing. Back at home, stop your ISP from traffic shaping and messing with the quality internet access you're paying good money for. You can connect from multiple machines at once, including your smartphone or tablet, and it supports all the secure standards, including OpenVPN and SSTP. Bypass censors and surveillance with your own secure VPN connection. Go to vpn.bogosity.tv.
Okay, another bit of criminal politician scum. Remember James Clapper? The one who committed outright perjury to Congress when he said that the NSA wasn't spying on Americans, which Edward Snowden later showed to be an outright lie? Now, Tulsi Gabbard has formally accused him of manipulating intelligence for political purposes on multiple occasions, starting with the lies about WMDs in Iraq all the way to the debunked Trump-Russia collusion hoax. She made the remarks during an appearance on Podforce One, a podcast with terrible audio quality that's hosted by Miranda Devine.
James Clapper was on the team that created, that manufactured intelligence assessment that led to the Iraq war, about the Iraq WMDs. He writes about it in his book, saying that he and his team of intelligence analysts created something that was not there.
His findings, later entirely discredited, concluded that Iraq had powerful weapons of mass destruction, which the Bush administration used as a pretext for the Iraq war that ultimately deposed Saddam Hussein. His imagery shown during his presentation were later found to be either incorrect or outright manipulated.
When you look at his actions then, and you look at his actions in 2016 as Obama's director of national intelligence, you see someone who has no problem whatsoever politicizing and manufacturing and weaponizing intelligence for a political outcome.
As for Russiagate, a lot of the intelligence centers around that Oval Office meeting on December 9, 2016.
It doesn't ask the question, did Russia try to help Trump win this election? It was detail how Moscow tried to influence the election in favor of Donald Trump. So it presumes the conclusion and drives the conclusion that President Obama wanted to see in pulling together pieces of intelligence that, based on the tradecraft standards that exist across the intelligence community, were considered substandard at best and were never used in a previous assessment because they were essentially trash. They were not credible. And then, of course, using the Steele dossier as one of the sources as though it was credible, even though the FBI and those involved, John Brennan and James Clapper, also knew that this was a long discredited document. They knew it was politically motivated, manufactured pieces of paper that were not rooted in any kind of true intelligence or truth.
In fact, the Russians felt it was a foregone conclusion that Hillary would win the election which is why they didn't release the information they did have, including, apparently, that she was addicted to tranquilizers, which explains her stumbling around in several videos, most notably the 9/11 anniversary. We also see this with the recently declassified Durham Annex, which shows that Hillary and her campaign conspired with the George Soros Foundation to fake the intel. It also shows Debbie Wasserman Schultz talking about how Hillary's emails were deleted just in the nick of time. And this may explain the raid on Mar-a-Lago. They were afraid that Trump may have the documents that implicate them, and they wanted to destroy them, as indeed they have many others. She just lays out how it's all that same group of intelligence officials who lied about WMDs and who lied about Hunter Biden's laptop with that infamous letter from the Dirty 51. As for what's going to happen,
we've referred all of the documents we have found. We will continue to refer them to the Department of Justice for a criminal referral. Attorney General Pam Bondi has created a strike force team in order to look at...
Which is serious. Strike force team.
It is.
So we'll have to see if anything actually happens. But at least now we know a lot more about it, with lots more apparently to come, so stay tuned.
I want to tell you about the eyeglasses I've been wearing for years. As people can see on my videos, I have a very strong prescription, which makes glasses more expensive, especially when I need computer glasses, reading glasses, prescription sunglasses, and most expensively, progressive lenses for general everyday wear. To save money while still getting quality glasses, I get them from Firmoo. In fact, I just got a pair of progressives with high-index aspherical lenses and a nice pair of frames my wife loves for just over $100. It would have been $500 to get them through my eye doctor. Not only do they look good, the glasses are durable. I've worn many pairs for several years without problems. All orders come with a 30-day return policy, a 3-month warranty, and one-on-one customer service. Go to Firmoo, that's FIRMOO.Bogosity.tv anytime you need quality glasses at a low price. Once again, that's Firmoo.Bogosity.tv.
And now it's time to homogenate this week's biggest Bogon emitter. And it's more Bogosity surrounding the opioid scare, this time from the Mayo Clinic. It's disheartening to think that now there's an entire generation of young doctors who believe this crap. But here, they've decided to throw the Hippocratic Oath out the window and tell dangerous lies and fear-mongering. Claims like, quote, "It's impossible to tell who could become dependent and misuse opioids. The misuse of opioids, legal, illegal, stolen, or shared, is the reason 90 people die in the U.S. every day on average." No, it isn't. As anyone who's watched my opioid playlist knows, this is pretty much due to black market fentanyl. And again, the CDC refuses to break this down, and doctors have been outright falsifying death certificates, so it's hard to get an exact count, but it's only something like 1,300 to 2,600 deaths per year that's due to the prescription opioids. That's at the most 7 a day. And something like 80% of those are polypharmacological, with other drugs such as alcohol or benzodiazepines as contributing, if not primary, factors. That leaves something like 250 to 500 annual deaths from prescription opioids alone. More people die from tripping over their own furniture! And we have the same addiction Bogosity, quote, "Addiction is a condition where something that started as pleasurable now feels like something you can't live without. Drug addiction is defined as an out-of-control feeling that you must use a medicine or drug and continue to use it even though it causes harm over and over again. Opioids are highly addictive, largely because they trigger powerful reward centers in your brain. In reality, addiction is none of those things. There's an underlying issue driving the addiction. Drugs don't do it, and people don't get addicted from exposure. And that's also how you can become addicted to things like gambling, where there's no drug involved. As the data in my playlist show, only 0.6% of opioid-naive patients become addicted. And when they do become addicted, it's tied to things such as adverse childhood experiences, mental health issues, and toxic stress. And if you're going to get addicted, that addiction manifests quickly. Taking opioids over a longer period of time does not increase your risk of addiction. And we have the usual bogus signs of disorder, such as crushing a pill before you take it, which a lot of people do, especially older people who have more difficulty swallowing. This does not make the pill more addictive, by the way. As long as you're not crushing an extended release pill, it takes just as long to get into your system. It's just really infuriating when they tell lies like this, quote, "If you're living with lifelong pain, opioids aren't likely to be a safe and effective long-term treatment option. Many other treatments are available, including less addictive pain medicines and therapies that don't involve medicines. If possible, aim for a treatment plan that allows you to enjoy your life without opioids." As I've repeatedly shown, there's only one word to describe this: torture! People have also reported going to the Mayo Clinic for surgery and being denied opioids for recovery, sentencing them to days, if not weeks, of completely unnecessary pain. The Mayo Clinic used to be the gold standard for medicine, and now this is what they've sunk to. If you've ever wondered why so many doctors would have gone along with the horrible forms of torture inflicted on so many during Nazi Germany, look no further. This isn't medicine. This is hate. Nothing more. So all of that makes the Mayo Clinic this week's biggest Bogon emitter.
Do you have children, or nieces or nephews? Are you homeschooling, or just want to counter some of the socialist indoctrination most children get in school? If so, go to Bogosity.tv/TuttleTwins, and you'll be taken to a website where you can get some great books for elementary-age children. The Tuttle Twins books are books about liberty and free market economics that include children's versions of Bastiat's The Law, Leonard Read's I, Pencil, and Hayek's The Road to Serfdom, as well as books about the Federal Reserve and how regulations protect business cronies. They'll learn about the harm caused by eminent domain, or regulations passed in the name of safety, and fundamental concepts of liberty. And as you can see from the sample pages on the website, they're all easy to read and nicely illustrated. They're just $9.99 a piece, or get a special discount as well as free bonuses when you purchase all 5. You can even buy in bulk to donate to schools and local libraries. So get the Tuttle Twins books at Bogosity.tv/TuttleTwins.
And now let's de-incomprehensibilization-ify this week's
Idiot Extraordinaire.
And this week it goes to Universal Pictures for their latest anti-AI blunder. Beginning with Jurassic Park Rebirth, the latest in their franchise of movies featuring dinosaurs who didn't actually live in the Jurassic, they've begun adding disclaimers in the credits saying that the movie, quote, may not be used to train AI. They can't use a disclaimer to cancel people's fair use. Imagine if they put in a disclaimer that said, no clips of this movie may be used in a negative review. How do you think people would react? But again, this is about destroying fair use, nothing else. Universal, along with Disney and other studios, has filed suit against Midjourney for the usual bogus reasons. Check out my generative AI playlist. Sadly, to my knowledge, I remain the only YouTuber who's been covering the AI cases other than just mindlessly babbling Hollywood's talking points. But that's why I read Midjourney's 43-page response to their court filing, including their outright hypocrisy in suing Midjourney while making extensive use of generative AI themselves. Quote, plaintiffs use and benefit from generative AI models, including Midjourney, and including in connection with some or all of the asserted works. Moreover, plaintiffs are, like Midjourney, directly or indirectly engaged in training generative AI models on publicly available works, some of which are protected by copyrights owned by third parties. Accordingly, it would be inequitable to permit plaintiffs to benefit from the development and use of generative AI tools, including Midjourney, on the one hand, and, on the other hand, prevent the development and use of Midjourney by others. Ultimately, this case is about fair use, and specifically whether we have it or whether it's the exclusive province of the movie cartels. Quote, "In the end, this case is not about Midjourney profiteering off of what plaintiffs call infringement. Midjourney isn't. Nor is it about any purported harm to plaintiffs. They have identified none. Rather, this case is about whether plaintiffs' alleged copyrights entitle them to prohibit the use of their works to train generative AI models and to prevent the incorporation of elements of those works within the creations of generative AI users, regardless of the contents of those creations and the ultimate ends to which users put them. Plaintiffs are not so entitled. Copyright has always been closely connected with freedom of expression on the one hand and technological improvements in means of dissemination on the other. With the law recognizing that limited use of copyrighted material to create new technologies and mediums advances copyright's ultimate objective, the stimulation of creative expression for public benefit. As Midjourney will establish, plaintiffs' overreach rests on fundamental misunderstandings of generative AI, its role in user creation, and the principles underpinning copyright law. So there. They really just don't like the competition, and that's that. They've never liked that people like you and me can make movies that compete with them. That's why, every time you buy a video camera, a bit of that price goes to pay an excise that goes to the big studios to compensate them for piracy. Come on, how many of you knew that? But with AI, there's no way they can pilfer that unearned money. Poor widow babies. Maybe if they started focusing on making better movies instead, they might get back some of their rapidly dwindling audience. So all of that makes Universal Pictures this week's Idiot Extraordinaire. Well, that wraps up this Rabble Today but an Army Tomorrow edition of the Bogosity Podcast. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please go to donate.bogosity.tv for several ways to support and discord.bogosity.tv to join the discussion. Subscribe at the Discord, Patreon, or Subscribestar, and you can listen early and ad-free. Thank you for listening. Until next time, here's a quote from Peter Sunde. As far as I know, no money ever won in a lawsuit by IFPI or the RIAA has even gone to any actual artist. The Bogosity Podcast is licensed under Creative Commons Attribution Non-Commercial No Derivatives 4.0 International License.
Bogosity.